We took the break. You were saying that there are things that you see that have been progress that has been made.
Lots of it.
In the fight against corruption.
Lots and lots and lots and lots of progress. It's just that one doesn't speak about it, perhaps loud enough, but it's there. You see, there's one thing to communicate and put across a message. It's another for the message to be understood the way you intend it to be understood.
True.
Now, when you speak about corruption, you're not just speaking in a void, you're speaking against some very serious headwinds. And these headwinds are the headwinds of conditioning. When something happens over a long period of time, what we refer to as people getting used to it is what I'm referring to as conditioning. Part of the reason why people talk of the West and give examples of the West and how it is corruption is fought is because what we consider basic amenities, which are our rights as per our constitution, you will find have been provided for. But when you live in a country where even the basics are non-existent, you see, government as it's instituted to you is actually a foreign agent. And when you come from a background where government was the source of your harassment and problems, the only way you overcome it is when you see things being done in the name of government that are positive and which meet your aspirations. Now, in the absence of these things, the amenities that the citizenry should expect as a right, in their absence, what then happens is an alternate system is created, and that's where our political leaders come in, presenting themselves as the people who are able to solve the problems, when in actual fact they don't. Because if someone encourages and endears a system where there's a dependency on handouts, how on earth is that person helping you? And yet the things we keep talking about, what are they? Roads, health, schools. These are things that every citizen in this country should expect as a given and as a norm, and yet they aren't. So the so-called political leaders assume a position that is unreal. They assume the position of saviors, whereas in fact they are the ones who are at the heart of the problem.
So there is evidence that the war against corruption is actually being won.
Yes, there's lots and lots and lots.
And that's the corruption. Even from what Eric is telling us, 32.8 billion shillings that has been recovered since 2019. About 32.5 billion shillings that was about to be corruptly acquired, that has been disrupted.
Circumvented.
Right?
Yes.
So this is disruption at that point of at the fact or after the fact.
Before it happens, there is people alert you that this is about to happen.
The thought has taken place. People have schemed. Blah,
they have
blah,
done
blah,
everything.
They're waiting for
just
signature.
before it is signed.
Money goes.
Yes. And that is where we are even investing a lot, because we should not wait until it happens, then seek to set the law in motion. We are engaging in a lot of preventive measures through proactive investigations. And there's another thing that is also very important. The Commission is also working with the public institutions to undertake what we call a corruption risk assessment. That is where we examine all the policies, operational areas, and the systems and the methods of work of an organization. That is dissecting and identify loopholes that may allow corruption. Then you seal them.
Is it possible?
The problem with that approach is that we rely on the goodwill of institutions to implement that. So we are talking to JLAC so that they could make it mandatory for organizations to implement reform recommendations arising from corruption risk assessments. And I can tell you, over 25 counties have actually been subjected to that. And the reports are there. Some governors are willing to implement. Last week, Mutula Kilonzo found such a report. And he invited us. He told us, come here and show me how to implement this. So there are some who are willing to do that.
Okay. The numbers that you've talked about in terms of money that has been then recovered, that's one thing.
Yes.
You've talked about then being able to get money that was about to then be so you circumvented a process. Is there any way to measure from the activities that you've been involved in?
Yes.
Is there any way to measure whether any of these activities have resulted in forming a deterrent to anyone who may be thinking, well, all right, here's a cash cow. So they've seen people have been arrested, been charged in court. They've seen that people have been fined or jailed. They've seen that EACC has moved in and then be able to stop an action from happening just before it's been able to happen. Is there any way to measure? Because obviously there's no art to tell what's going on in somebody's mind in terms of what they're going to do. But would it be possible to say that, look, in certain departments, we had seen corruption run rife over the last 5 years, and we've seen that number reduce significantly because of these other activities that have been taking place. Is there any way?
Yeah, there is so much that is happening, and that includes people suffering the consequences of engaging in corruption. Probably it is not being talked about as loud as it should, especially in the area of asset recovery. How do you feel if a cow you have been milking for a number of years is one day taken away, and you are told that from today you shall no longer milk this?
You shall buy milk.
I can tell you there are people who have actually run into depression and others hospitalized after certain things they had stolen and taken away. And that is why we continue to invest a lot in asset recovery, because once you take away that motivation, it makes it
painful,
and people are able to see that there is no gain in engaging in corruption. But there's another problem. You've noticed that in the last few months, we report almost on a daily basis of something that has been recovered or a case that has been filed to recover. But now we have realized that there are some land officials who are again colluding to reallocate that land to new grabbers. And that has changed our strategic approach. You recover a piece of land or a government house, then some corrupt public official in a land office sees something that is hanging or something that wasn't there, then colludes with another thief and allocates to a new grabber. We have examples in Laikipia County, and this is what the commission is doing now. In addition to recovering land and other properties that have been stolen, we are also going to those public officials who are located. Because, truth be told, there is no grabber who can walk into some land office and allocate themselves land and give themselves a title deed. There is a land official involved in every transaction of that nature.
Of course, yes.
So we are not only recovering what has been stolen, but we are also going to those public officials who are involved in that. So we continue to warn them that will not be tolerated.
When I hear about asset recovery,
yes,
and I then look at the mandate of the EACC,
yes,
as has been prescribed by the EACC Act,
yes,
and the Constitution, and then I ask myself, so how many agencies are really involved in this whole sphere of fighting corruption? EACC is an investigative authority.
Yes.
EACC is also involved in going in instituting civil suit cases in asset recovery. There is, under the provisions of blah blah blah, that law.
Yes.
That long law.
Which one is this?
The Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act.
Yes.
That one.
Yes.
There is the Asset Recovery Authority. There is the Directorate of Criminal Investigations under the police. There is the Kenya Revenue Authority that will also now talk about people who are corruptly not paying taxes. Where do you draw the line between all these agencies that all have a mandate to investigate and all have a mandate to take matters to court?
Let me put it this way. There are two angles to look at that. First of all, the fight against corruption cannot be the preserve of one entity. And that is why we have EACC as a lead agency. And as I said earlier, the reason why countries have specialized agencies to deal with the crime called corruption is because of the very nature of the offense itself. Corruption is not like other offenses such as murder, rape, terrorism. This one is, it has other issues including being a highly political issue. So for that reason, to ensure that there is independence on how these matters are handled, to ensure that uniform standards are applied, so that if Ndu and Regulative were to engage in some kind of corruption, you will not go to different institutions and handle it differently. So to ensure we've consistency and also to take into account the need for the expertise required, because we earlier said that this is complex. That is why countries do establish entities to specifically deal with corruption.
May I say something?
So just before I lose it, so entities are supposed to collaborate. But again, while collaborating or synergizing, we should be careful to avoid duplication.
Okay.
And how can that be sorted? By every entity clearly understanding what its mandate is, where the boundaries are, so that we do not have cases.
So that's my
where
question.
We are duplicating.
Where are the boundaries of the lead agency, the EACC?
So for EACC,
where do they start? Where do they end? Where does the DCI start? Where does it end? Where does the KRA start? Where does it end? Where does the Asset Recovery Authority start? Where does it end? Who handles what?
Because I'm the spokesperson for EACC, let me speak about EACC and for EACC.
You're also speaking as the one who's a lead agency. You've been saying this very many times.
To the extent appropriate, I hope.
Okay.
Yes.
The EACC is the entity that is constitutionally mandated to combat corruption, that is, to investigate corruption. That is pursuant to Article 79 of the Constitution. Then that article of the Constitution also requires that Parliament enacts a statute that provides how the functions of EACC shall be undertaken. And those functions have been clearly enumerated as follows: investigation of corruption. And number 2, recovery of assets that have been stolen from the public and taking them back to the public. Number 3, we have prevention, the one that I talked about. But that does not mean that we do not have other entities that have collateral functions that are related in the pursuit of a crime-free society. For instance, you've talked about ARA. I know ARA has also a wide mandate to recover proceeds of
money
crime, money laundering, etc.
Transnational crime.
That is it. So for EACC, it's about corruption, and the Commission has lived up to the expectations of best practice in the performance of anti-corruption agencies. One of the things that anti-corruption agencies are supposed to observe, because of the nature of the offense that it deals with, is independence. The Commission has so far discharged its duties in an independent manner and in an objective manner.
Have you ended up somewhere where you're investigating?
Yes.
And then you find another agency has already been there? Or you hear after you've left, another agency has come in. You've gone to a county, you're investigating certain, cases of what you have been told by your informers. There could be corruption happening here. Then the same has been sent maybe to the DCI. The same has been sent to another agency. So you all land into this place and you're all investigating something around corruption. It's basically crime. You're investigating crime. You call it corruption. DCI calls it crime. Asset and Recovery calls it money laundering. The KRA calls it tax evasion. And you all find yourselves in that place.
That has happened before. And the Commission leverages on some of the consultative frameworks that exist where we discuss those issues. We have had the multi-agency framework, that is MAT. Now we also have the National Council on Administration of Justice. So the point I emphasize is that there is need to ensure that there is no duplication on how these matters are handled, because if we have different agencies doing different things over the same issue, that can have problems. But for us as EACC, we remain firmly focused on what our mandate is. That is to investigate and also recover
what laws adequate?
Has been stolen. I know there could be gaps here and there, and that is why we have a forum like this one where we have on Friday, so that even as we take stock of what has happened and where there are gaps, these are some of the issues that we keep on raising, because we have to collaborate. But again,
it's always a work in progress.
To work in a manner that should ensure that no agency prejudices what another one does, because we must at all costs avoid silo mentality in the fight against corruption.
Are the laws,
but at the same time avoiding things that could also prejudice the effectiveness that is required.
Are the laws in this country adequate to help you fulfill your mandate? I'll tell you why I asked the question. You say the things that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission investigate are not the same as rape, violence, mass murder, ethnic violence. And I'm saying they are. In fact, when you look at corruption and the outcome of corruption, it brings about literally all these crimes that you talk about. Where there has been corruption and where it is entrenched, the suffering that we deal with on a daily basis, the things that we see as runaway, they are as a consequence of these things. The escalation of crime, you just think about it and name it. Up until even the violence we had in the year 2007, corruption is behind literally everything that we have seen going wrong in this country now. Does the law enable you to charge a corrupt person with crimes against humanity? Because that is exactly what they do. When someone steals money meant for a county or for a ministry or for a road, that is exactly what they've done.
You are right to the extent that corruption is in a way linked to every other evil that we see in our society. But for efficiency and seamless implementation of the laws, we have different entities that have been tasked or mandated to handle specific aspects. And I want to agree with you that if we were to effectively tackle corruption as a country, that would automatically mitigate these other crimes. Because if there is a corruption within the security sector, a person who has been compromised can allow bad elements to, to compromise our security. If we have a corrupt engineer who will approve a road that is shoddy, and thereafter an accident occurs killing people, so they are linked in one way or another. So that is why corruption, being the mother problem, let me put it that way, as its own agency to deal with. Then we have these other aspects vested in different institutions. So Eric, to answer your question, entities have to work together, but again, within a framework that allows corruption to be fought without duplication. That is necessary for efficiency and effectiveness.
What are some of the challenges that you've had in the fight against corruption? Obviously, one would think from some of the things that you say that, you know, everything is going along well, but clearly there are some challenges. And what are some of those?
Thank you very much. One of the challenges is what Eric was saying earlier. Our moral fabric as a society is shattered. And sometimes those who do not even plan the public resources may be viewed as stupid. We have
not
people.
Sometimes,
We have people who finalized their. we have people who finalized their term of office and went home after election. So there are communities where people want to ask them, now you have come, what have you come with? You've been there for 5 years. So I think that culture needs to be addressed and people have to change their attitudes because we have to fight this collectively. Number two, after public apathy, is also the failure of key actors such as accounting officers and oversight entities to also effectively do their work. When I say this, what comes to my mind is the challenge that we have in county governments. When you hear of a county government where we have ghosty workers that have worked there for years, are we saying that the county assembly, whose mandate is oversight, the other one is legislation, and the other one is representation. Let's talk about the oversight one. Where is the county assembly when these ghost workers are recruited and maintained the payroll system.
They're complicit.
And are we also saying that even those other officers in other departments, there is no single individual in a county who is able to see this as a mistake, including those who manage the payroll and raise the flag? So an effective fight against corruption will require every person to realize that they have a responsibility and that it affects them. The problem we have in county assemblies, again, is also to do with the failure by the CEOs to put in place strong accountability systems. So that's a challenge too. Governors today are the CEOs of the organizations. Yeah. So the first point of call when we are talking about fighting corruption in counties is actually in the office of the governor.
Yeah.
They are the CEOs. So what are they supposed to do? To put in place mechanisms that will make it impossible for any person who is inclined to engage in corruption from stealing. But now if a governor will come later and say, oh, I don't sit in the procurement committee, so don't ask me about this. No.
You have a responsibility.
To take that responsibility. And in that regard, we must appreciate quite a number of the newly appointed governors who actually went ahead to establish audit committees. Those audit committees have revealed certain things that need to be corrected, but the Commission continues to urge the governors not to stop there. It is not enough to have those recommendations. So we expect them to act on those recommendations by putting in place mechanisms that will, first of all, stop whatever is happening from happening and prevent further happening of the same. And then where we have matters that require other legal action, such as investigation, where people have to be taken to court even for recovery of what they have stolen, then we expect them to refer those matters to us. What we need is very strong internal controls. The other one is on the accounting officers. Every organization has an accounting officer. We expect them to prevent corruption. So you cannot talk about some junior officers or other middle-level managers stealing billions that we are recovering. Then you tell me that the PS or the accounting officer was not aware. So let people do what they have to do, and everybody should execute their responsibility.
The 9th of December 2022 is the International Anti-Corruption Day. We'll commemorate it in Nairobi. Where will it be? Here?
Here in Nairobi, we shall have that one at the Kenya School of Government.
Yes.
It will be live in one of the TV stations so that we can be able to reach every Kenyan and other digital platforms. And then the whole of this week, we have a series of media engagements to talk to citizens so that we can together reflect on what we have done and what needs to be done better. So I want to urge you and challenge you also to also integrate this in your programs for this week, so that we all, reflect on what needs to be done better.
Ngumbi, Head of Corporate Affairs and Communication of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Good morning, 8 a.m.